Hey, it's Shane from GotRom.com. Welcome to Shoulder Impingement Explained. Let's just start with this. Weightlifting is badass. It's good for your health and it makes you feel good. But what happens when you start getting pain or impingement feelings when you try to snatch, overhead squat, or press weights overhead? You might be getting something called shoulder impingement. Now, what is shoulder impingement? Shoulder impingement occurs when the tendon of the supraspinatus muscle gets pinched in the upper shoulder. The cause of shoulder impingement is basically crappy upper body posture and key muscles that are too dense or tight. Of course, bony anatomy like your acromion type can have an influence, but you don't have any direct control over that, and surgeries to fix such issues are risky and expensive. Your best bet is to fix your posture by doing tissue work, stretching, and strengthening, and learning how to move better. But why do you get impinged in the first place? If we look at the anatomy, the supraspinatus muscle is the top muscle of your rotator cuff. It connects the scapula to the humerus. The tendon runs through a small area under your acromion process. This cramped little space is where the tendon becomes impinged and is the reason why you can't overhead press anymore. What influences shoulder impingement? Here are some key influences. 1. Tissue quality. Years of poor posture makes muscles dense and fibrous. Think beef jerky. Previous injuries, scar tissue, and daily wear and tear add up to dense, junky tissue. Muscle extensibility. How many minutes a day do you spend with your arms overhead? Less than 1 minute? So what makes you think that you can go from no preparation to ballistically snatching and pressing heavy weights overhead with no consequences? You have to learn how to stretch. You have to learn how to mobilize your shoulders. Thoracic spine mobility. This one is a biggie. If your upper back, aka your thoracic spine, looks like a turtle or looks like grandma and grandpa, then when you try to raise your arm up overhead, your scapula basically has a car crash with your thoracic spine and it blocks any further range of motion. To improve that and to not have such shoulder impingement that results from that, you need to work on thoracic spine mobility. Degree of elevation. The more you raise your arm overhead, the greater the degree of impingement. This is why I typically modify an athlete's training in the short term to include less overhead pressing movements when they are dealing with shoulder impingement. Acromion type, which can be 1, 2, or 3. Yes, bone shapes matter. Unfortunately, you have no control over this part. It's genetic. Thanks, Mom and Dad. Rotator cuff stability. How well does your rotator cuff dynamically stabilize the joint in various angles and under various loads? If the answer is not well, then you might need to work on a little bit of rotator cuff stability training. Scapular stability and mobility. The more stable and mobile the scapula, the more likely it is to be in a proper position when you need it. This requires taking the brakes off, or releasing the pecs, for example, as well as training proper scapulohumeral rhythm via practice. Humeral external rotation. Certain movements that lock the humeral head in internal rotation, like a bench press, increase the degree of impingement, and this is why I have most of my impingement athletes do dumbbell bench press with a neutral grip rather than barbell bench press. Breathing patterns. Yes, breathing patterns also can affect your shoulder impingement. The easiest way to improve your breathing is to try to be a belly breather rather than a chest breather. Lower body mobility issues. Tight hips and ankles downstream can actually increase shoulder impingement in the overhead squat upstream. This is because if your hips and ankles can't allow you to sink into a nice, deep, upright squat, then your shoulders are always going to be in a wretched position, causing more shoulder impingement. So what can you do? If the internal rotators of the shoulder, the pec major, subscap, and lats, are too strong, and the rotator cuff and the scapular retractor muscles, rhomboids and lower traps, are too weak, impingement can occur. More specifically, in most people, I've not found that it's just a strength and weakness imbalance. Rather, it's a postural problem. When the posture is corrected and the muscles that are overly dense or tight are relaxed and lengthened, strength and balance are restored automatically. This phenomenon of muscles being too weak to do their job is referred to as positional inhibition. Fixing it is how you fix shoulder impingement. It's also important that you learn proper technique like core bracing, cervical positioning, and a few anatomical principles like where's the plane of scaption, using a slight shoulder external rotation force to unimpinge yourself. So as you can see, there's a lot to learn. These are complex topics. That's why I created an entire 30-day program called Super Shoulders to help with shoulder impingement for weightlifters and shoulder flexibility and mobility in general. So if you want to check that out, go to gotrom.com, and I'll see you in the next video.